Marathon 2025 season. It's time for sprint action in Chapter 10 at the legendary TT Circuit Assen. In a country famous for canals, windmills and art, the Netherlands has hosted racing in Assen for over 100 years and staged the third Grand Prix in history back in July 1949. It's the turn of racing's Monday superstar to shine, the 13-lap sprint. It's time for MotoGP. So the TT Circuit Assen, 4.54 kilometres in length, 2.822 miles, 18 corners, 12 right, 6 of them left. It is fast and furious around the Cathedral of Speed, the most northerly track on the Grand Prix calendar. We came racing on a Saturday for the first time, 9 years ago now, back in 2016. Sector 2, the fast run through 6 and 7. 7 where Marc Marquez had a big crash yesterday afternoon in practice. Marquez was down also at turn 15 in FP1 yesterday. Turn 1, turn 9 and turn 16 into the famous timber chicane, the most stressful for the brakes. Overtaking hot spots, well, there's lots of them, particularly into the final chicane where there has been some of the most iconic battles in history. What a move this was by Latest Spargaro. 2 for the price of 1 on Binder and Miller into the chicane. So the first 7 laps in the Italian Grand Prix in Mugello, 6 days ago now, the Tuscany Mountains were some of the best action, the most intense action we have seen of the 2025 season so far. What an early battle it was between Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez, and the home crowd hero Pecco Bagnaia was fighting for his 4th successive victory in front of his home crowd. It got close, it got super close at times. This was early contact between factory Ducati teammates Marc and Bagnaia. But for the first time since 2014, and for the first time as a factory Ducati rider in Mugello, Marc Marquez was victorious, increasing his World Championship lead to 40 points coming into round 10 here in Assen. It has not all been plain sailing so far this weekend, though, for the 32-year-old Spaniard, who had a heavy crash at turn 15 yesterday morning in the opening practice session. He was down hard as well yesterday at turn 7. He was directly through into Q2, and Marc Marquez finds himself starting the upcoming 13-lap sprint here in Assen, off the front row of the grid for just the 2nd time this season. Marc will fire away from 4th place for the Ducati Lenovo team. Pole position for the 4th time in the last 6 Grand Prix. Well, that went the way of factory Yamaha star Fabio Quartararo. The Frenchman flying once again, victorious here in the Grand Prix of the Netherlands 4 years ago now, back in 2021. Brilliant poles in Jerez, Le Mans and Silverstone. Just the 1 podium though from those 3 previous poles. Can he set that record straight here? Over 13 laps in the sprint this afternoon. 26 laps will be the full distance in just under 24 hours time here in what is a celebration weekend in Assen. The first motorcycle racing action took part in this part of Europe 100 years ago, all the way back in 1925. Quartararo then, from a quartet of poles so far in 2025. His 20th pole of his Premier Class career. Only Valentino Rossi and Jorge Lorenzo, Yamaha legends, previously had scored more than 20 MotoGP podiums for the Iwata factory. Front row then led by Quartararo. He set a 1:30.651 in this morning's Q2 session, ahead of Pecco Bagnaia, the factory Ducati rider, who saw his love affair with Mugello ended last weekend when he was comprehensively beaten by not just 1, not 2, but 3 Ducatis in front of his home crowd, as he was beaten by Marc and Alex Marquez, and also by the late charge of Fabio Di Gianantonio. Bagnaia, though, tomorrow can make it 4 successive wins here in Assen. He has got a big affection for this iconic venue. Of course, it was all the way back here in 2016 when he took his first ever Grand Prix success. He likes Assen so much, he has a tattoo on his right arm to mark that first victory 9 long years ago. Bagnaia then, 2nd on the grid for the 2nd Grand Prix in succession, completing your front row. His 9th front row start in the opening 10 Grand Prix as the rider second in the World Championship, Brazilian Racing's Alex Marquez. So Quartararo, Bagnaia, Alex Marquez as your front row of the grid. 13 laps of sprint action coming up in about 25 minutes time in the company of Matt Burton Lewis to be in the commentary box, Jack Appleyard down in what is still a relatively cool pit lane. We were expecting a lot more sunshine to hit this part of northeast Netherlands today, but after a very bright start this morning, we've had nothing but heavy cloud cover, which is keeping it relatively cool. It's certainly a bit of a stiff breeze blowing around Assen. As Marc Marquez then tries to continue his unbelievable reign so far in sprints in 2025, he has not yet finished lower than second. In 9 sprints, he's won 8 of them. He's picked up so many important championship points on Saturday afternoons as Marc Marquez, but after the 2 crashes yesterday, which would have knocked the confidence and certainly left him a bit battered and bruised, he has work to do. Second row of the grid for just the 2nd time this season.
And the only other time this season he started off the front row of the grid, and he didn't win the sprint, and that's the only time we've been able to say that in 2025. Alex Marquez taking the sprint victory at Silverstone when he started that particular encounter in 2nd place on the grid. He starts 3rd today behind Pecco Bagnaia and Fabio Quartararo. The temperatures might be relatively cool based on what we've had in the last couple of Grand Prix weekends, but the action this afternoon should be very hot indeed. 11 enticing laps ahead of us as Fabio Quartararo looks to try and keep that armada of Ducatis behind him.
Yeah, Quartararo leads the field away then, ahead of Bagnaia and Marquez. Alex, of course, as Quartararo just gets some, pleases some fans here in the Netherlands. He's very popular in this part of the world. 2021 Assen Grand Prix winner, as we mentioned. That was his last podium finish in a Grand Prix here at this iconic venue. His one and only sprint podium did come here 2 years ago, back in 2023. It was a rather fortuitous podium because it came courtesy of KTM star Brad Binder having a 3rd place over the line taken away from him for a last lap track limit infringement. But Fabio Quartararo, El Diablo, ready to try and deliver some Dutch delight for himself and the factory Yamaha team. Just over 200ths of a second he was clear of Bagnaia at the end of that Q2 session this morning. Well, as you mentioned, there are the Fabio Quartararo fans. There are plenty of El Diablo 20 flags around this 4.54 kilometre Assen layout. And as mentioned, it has been a rather grey day, really, we have to say, in terms of the weather. We're expecting certainly sunnier conditions and maybe some warmer conditions. But let's go and find out exactly what's going on with the weather down in pit lane with Jack.
Yeah, I went to chat to our resident weatherman, Lucio Cecchinello, who, of course, famously called the conditions perfectly in Le Mans as Johann Zarco went on to take that famous French Grand Prix victory. Says that we shouldn't get any kind of inclement weather. I was slightly worried. The grey clouds have started to come in. The winds have picked up all of the signs that usually mean we could be in for a little bit of rain, but Lucio confirms and guarantees to me that although we are just on the edge of a weather front that has been passing through the Netherlands, we should be able to avoid it and we should have a dry sprint coming our way.
And Lucio Cecchinello has the best weather apps in the business, so if he says it's not going to rain, we're going to trust him at this stage, even if we cannot always say that with absolute certainty here at Assen. You saw there just on screen a moment ago a statement from Aprilia. Of course, that was in response to Jorge Martin's personal manager Alvaro Valera and his comments to Jack Appleyard in free practice 2 earlier on this morning, reiterating Jorge Martin's intention to leave Aprilia at the end of this season and that he is breaking the contract with the clause within it that enables him to leave at the end of 2025. That story clearly going to run and run both up until and past the point that Jorge Martin returns to action.
Joan Mir was frustrated this morning to miss out on a place in Q2. 13th he starts on the grid, the 2020 MotoGP World Champion. It's the 4th time in the last 5 Grand Prix Mir has not advanced into Q2. Can anybody then find a way to stop the Marc Marquez freight train on Saturday afternoons? He has been in a different level, really. So many times in the short sprint format, as Davide Tardozzi looks on. There's a very familiar theme to Sprint Saturdays this season, because every single 1 and 2 we've had so far has been Marc versus Alex on 8 occasions. Alex versus Mark on just the one. Here is Batmav and now Supermav. Of course, a special tie-up that Maverick Vinales has with Warner Brothers at the moment, promoting the upcoming release of the new Superman movie. Well, he might need a Superman performance coming from 10th on the grid. I think it's fair to say, Lewis, the Red Bull KTM Tech 3 rider expected a lot more in Q2. We certainly expected to see him maybe figuring inside that top 6. He's going to have to produce some heroics, isn't he, to get through from that 4th row.
Yeah, tall order for Maverick Vinales. Outside of that technical problem in Silverstone, it's his worst qualifying since Austin back in round 3 of the season, which was in that sort of early initial sort of acclimatization phase with the KTM. Of course, that was followed by Qatar, and he's been a front runner or a contender in the top 6 ever since. KTM collectively, I think, would be considered the surprise and the disappointment of qualifying earlier on today, with Maverick Vinales 10th, Pedro Acosta only 1 place further up the grid in 9th, and he was up inside the top 3 at the end of practice yesterday. KTM expected more than that in qualifying earlier on.
Jack Miller, the Aussie for Pramac Yamaha, he fires away from 14th place on the grid. We've seen the difference that Quattararo been able to make on the Yamaha in particular is in the final sector. There's 2 or 3 laps where we saw Miller on course for a real strong performance in Q1 this morning, but strong with the first half lap, but just missing out in the last section in particular. That's where Quattararo has the upper hand compared to the Yamaha position. Marco Bezzecchi, first time we've seen him start inside the top 6 on the factory Aprilia. Season best 5th place for Bez. Keep an eye on the 2022 runner-up here in the Assen Grand Prix, his first MotoGP podium. He has got great race pace, has the Italian. Hits his best starting position for the number 72 in 12 Grand Prix since the Thai Grand Prix in Buriram on our flyaway sequence at the end of last season. So yeah, fancy Bears certainly over the full distance tomorrow to be right in the podium battle.
And could he potentially be in the podium battle in this sprint too? We shall see. Here is Pedro Acosta then, 9th position on the grid for Pedro, who did find himself off the front 3 rows of the grid for 4 consecutive Grand Prix until Aragon, where his qualifying fortune started to turn around a little bit. And given how quick he was in practice yesterday, surely he would have been aiming for the front 2 rows of the grid. A front 2 rows which is made up of 1 Yamaha, 4 Ducatis, and that's all Aprilia of Bezzecchi. So KTM just ultimately just didn't have the speed when they went for brand new soft tyres earlier on today, which has left them their 2 Q2 qualifiers in 9th and 10th respectively.
It's been a bruising weekend for Marc Marquez. It's certainly been a bruising weekend for reigning Moto2 world champion Ai Ogura, the 24-year-old Japanese rider. Had a monumental high side yesterday afternoon at turn 11, a fireball crash for Ogura. That put him into Q1, and then in that Q1 session, another get-off, this time around at turn 8 in Steckenval. We feared it would be costly. At the time that he fell off, he was in 2nd place and looking very, very strong. Unfortunately, the mistake that Ogura made sees him all the way back down in 20th place on the grid. It just shows how you can ill afford slip-ups, particularly in those Q1 sessions.
Yeah, there was some positivity for Trackhouse though out of that Q1 session, because Ralph Fernandez, his teammate, did come through and into Q2 and put himself in 11th place on the grid. 2nd Grand Prix in a row that Ralph Fernandez has made his way through Q1 and into qualifying too. So a little bit of a mini resurgence as we approach the halfway stage in the season for Fernandez after his best point scoring weekend of the season last time out in Mugello. He'll be eyeing another points visit here. He needs to get in the top 9, of course.
I think he's been through the Q2 4 times so far this year. Ralph Fernandez certainly benefiting from some of the upgrades from the Nuali factory, from Aprilia. As he mentioned, you could see the frustration if he joined us this morning when Joan Mir was bumped out of Q2 very late on. He is the lead Honda qualifier, so just 1 place behind Johan Zarco, who is the lead Honda qualifier. Zarco made it through yesterday by the skin of his teeth directly into Q2, just a thousandth of a second ahead of Ralph Fernandez, but not really able to take full advantage. Zarco at the checker flag in Q2 was at the back of the pack in 12th place, almost a full second behind his fellow Frenchman Fabio Quattararo, occupying that 20th MotoGP pole. Exciting lap then underway here ahead of the 13-lap sprint here in Assen, under what are grey and gloomy but rather, well, thankfully, dry skies. So often we've seen down the years here in Assen, when the cloud does close in, we can get some pretty torrential rain that has disrupted many a Grand Prix back in the day. But it has been cloudy, but it has been dry, thankfully, for the most part of the day. We're not expecting any rain interruption throughout the course of the upcoming sprint.
Certainly when we get to tomorrow, beautiful sunshine is forecast, although we're expecting a little bit more sunshine today than we've had so far, so take that with a pinch of salt. Certainly the cooler the conditions are, you'd expect it to play into the hands of this man. Certainly from a Yamaha point of view, Mugello was a good example of this. The hotter it got, the slower they got over the course of the weekend. It was absolutely baking hot on the Sunday afternoon in Mugello, and Quartararo fell all the way down to the tail end of the points. He only scored 2 of them for 14th place. So certainly the cooler temperatures and the cloud cover, which will certainly keep the track temperature relatively cool, should play to Yamaha's hands.
2023 Dutch TT, last time Quartararo, or the only time Quartararo actually has picked up a medal at the end of a sprint. Is today the day where he can get his first gold? His golden performance this morning in qualifying. He needs to arrest a bit of a recent slump. He's picked up just 2 points in the last 4 Grand Prix since he was second in Jerez. This is just, 2 former factory Yamaha teammates, of course, Maverick Vinales and Fabio Quartararo. They were first and second in that 2021 battle here a few years ago, just egging each other on. Vinales then coming to the grid. Shame to see Vinales actually as far down on the grid as he is on that 4th row in 10th place, because you do feel that he does have top 5 pace, maybe even better. It's going to be all about how aggressive, how quickly Maverick can work his way through. We know that the KTM is a missile, isn't it, launching away from the line, and it seems that Vinales has found a little bit of first lap aggression, which has perhaps been a weak link over the last few years. Let's keep a close eye on Vinales charging from 10th place on the grid. Well, we've bigged him up, we've talked about his prospects of maybe a double podium challenge, hopefully, in the sprint and the Grand Prix here tomorrow. Marco Bezzecchi's looked in fantastic form on the factory Aprilia, a season best qualifying in 5th place. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Paolo Bonora, who joins Jack.
Yeah, Phil, for the past 3 months, Paolo, I've been saying if only Marco could be on the front 2 rows of the grid. He's got a great opportunity. Well, he's done the business now, 5th on the grid, giving himself a great chance, not only for the sprints, but for tomorrow's Grand Prix as well.
Yes, you are fully right. 5th position, a good qualifying position, so he has the opportunity. We doesn't want to have any expectation for sure, but we are keep working. Probably tomorrow with a longer distance, it will be easier also for him to manage the tire, because he has a good race pace. Today is necessary to be in the front in the first part of the race, and then to manage.
Just looking at the rhythm of all of the contenders, it doesn't look like there's anybody that stands out, for me anyway. If the opportunity arises, is today one of those days where you just have to grab it with both hands?
Well, we hope, Jack, absolutely. We hope. For sure, he has big talent, and for sure he has a lot of energy. And if he have the opportunity to overtake somebody, he will do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paolo. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. Thanks as always to Aprilia boss Paolo Bonora. The 26-year-old Italian Marco Bezzecchi has been top 5 in every session he started so far here this weekend. And here's that previous sprint, when his only sprint win was right here in 2023 here in Assen. 40 sprints ago. So fair to say he's due a return to the gold medal position.
Rider I'm really kind of keen to see how he gets on in this sprint is Pecco Bagnaia from 2nd on the grid, front row. Just the 2nd time this year that he has out-qualified Marc Marquez as factory Ducati teammates, and has looked the business so far this weekend, no question about that. Of course, this is a circuit that Bagnaia has such a strong and proud record on. Of course, a MotoGP winner here in the last 3 years, and famously took the first Grand Prix win of his Moto3 career on a Mahindra here 9 years ago. He goes from 2nd place then, with Fabio Quartararo on pole and Alex Marquez either side of Bagnaia on that front row. Soft front and rear tyres for the front row, and you expect that to be the case across the grid. Marc Marquez, Marco Bezzecchi and Frankie Morbidelli on row 2 from Fermin Aldeguer, Fabio Di Giannantonio and Pedro Acosta. Maverick Vinales Viñales starts 10th on the first of the Tech 3 KTMs. His teammate Enea Bastianini, as you'll see shortly, starts 17th. Let's get some pre-sprint reports from their team manager, Nico Goyon, with Jack.
Nico, it's been a strong weekend, or up to qualifying anyway, for Maverick. You felt as though if he was on the front 2 rows, he'd really fancy his chances. What's going to be possible from row 4?
Well, I said earlier at the beginning of the weekend, it will be important to understand how much we improve on this track. This is obviously not the best track for our bike, for the KTM. And it's a way of turning, and it's true that we have played quite in the front, but at the moment to go really fast on one lap, we stepped back together with Acosta. We saw it was quite difficult, so it'll be interesting. I still believe we have a good pace, but yeah, I'm not so confident to fight for the top 5.
Thanks, Nico.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a shame, isn't it, as far as Viñales is concerned. Not so confident to attack for the top 5, says the team boss Nico Goyon. Well, never say never. Of course, Enea Bastianini, Viñales' Italian teammate, 17th on the grid for this sprint. But if you join us this morning in qualifying, you would have seen him bulking Alex Rins going up through turn 10. And as we suspected, when the FI MotoGP stewards had a close look at that, when they had the chance to, a 3-place grid penalty in place for Enea. So, yeah, naughty boy.
Let's serve that in tomorrow's Grand Prix itself. Let's get some word then from the factory Ducati team. 2nd and 4th for Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez. Davide Tardozzi's with Jack.
Davide, we know the struggles that Pecco's had, in particular in sprint races this year. So how big are the upcoming 13 laps for Pecco, given the pace that he's shown this weekend?
Yeah, sure, it will be a tough race because Fabio and Alex, sure they would like to win the race, while Mark is always there. So we'll see, I'm sure that he wants to try hardly to win this race, but in the end, collect points is the most important thing.
After qualifying this morning, how was Mark's body ahead of the sprint?
Yeah, no, not bad. Mark is a champion. When it's race time, the pain is on the side.
Thanks, Davide.
Thank you.
Yeah, adrenaline, always the best painkiller in the world. We just saw there a quick glimpse of Frankie Morbidelli. Fun there, divided loyalties between a former legend, Valentino Rossi, 46, and a lovely little 43 Jack Miller KTM toy there, a replica of Miller's former motorcycle in Grand Prix racing. Morbidelli goes away from 6th place on the grid. He was pretty happy with that, pretty satisfied. Never really been comfortable on the Ducati in 2024 or in 2025 around this fast and flowing Assen circuit. Morbidelli half a second away from pole he was this morning. Let's see if he can have a cleaner sprint than what he had in the Italian Grand Prix last weekend, when he clattered into poor old Maverick Viñales. Got a long lap, botched the long lap, and then had to come back through it again. Although, to be fair to Frankie, despite all the drama, the self-inflicted drama in Mugello, he was still able to come across the line in yet another 6th place. Top 6s he's been reeling off for fun so far this year, as Frankie.
And he's had the clear edge in qualifying over his teammate here, Fabio Di Giannantonio. It's now 7-3 in Morbidelli's favour, and Di Giannantonio said after he came through to the podium in Mugello, if only I could qualify on the front 2 rows, which he felt was the maximum he could afford to start in terms of how far back on the grid he was, he could maybe fight for the podium from there. He hasn't made that today. 8th on the grid for Digia, a place lower than he qualified in Mugello last time out, although this is another circuit that Di Giannantonio is confident all round and has been strong at historically. 8th on the grid for him. He'll be aiming to go forwards from there.
Well, it has been another phenomenal Saturday so far for Fabio Quartararo. 4th pole position in the last 6 Grand Prix. He's looked in tremendous form all weekend. Fastest on Friday, on pole position. Can he win the first sprint for the factory Yamaha team? Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Mario Meregali, who joins Jack.
Mayo, it's obvious Fabio's having a fantastic weekend. Fastest yesterday, pole position. How big of an opportunity is this?
Yeah, for sure it's a good opportunity. We did also a great FP this morning. We plan to try to manage the tire. He did for me good pace. Was not the fastest, but he tried to manage the tire. You know, he's always very critical, and he was satisfied at the end of the session. So now it's really up to him. You know, for us it's not easy to overtake, so I think one of the key will be being first in the first corner and then try to make his space. One good strong point of Fabio is the last sector, so he might pull a bit and try to manage this advantage, but it is easy for us.
Always easy for us to say. Maio, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Yamaha boss Mario Meregali. As he alluded to there, as he mentioned, Quartararo has been mustered in that final sector. The other Yamahas can't hold a candle to him. He's had the upper hand on most of the opposition in that final sector. Only Alex and Marc Marquez so far in 2025 have led more laps than Fabio Quartararo. Of course, he did lead. Well, the last time he led was the first 11 laps at Silverstone before the heartache followed when the ride height device on the Wiesdart M1 failed. Well, there's a current Yamaha superstar on pole position. There's certainly an ex-Yamaha superstar joining him on the grid. 8-time MotoGP world champion Giacomo Agostini, of course, here enjoying the celebrations as Assen marks 100 years of racing in the northeast Netherlands. It's 50 years since one of Ago's great friends and great rivals, the late great Barry Sheene. 50 years to the very day that he won his very first MotoGP race. Can Fabio Quartararo win his very first sprint? Well, we're about to find out, aren't we, as the clock ticks down. Just over 3 minutes it is until lights out. There is Bagnaia, second on the grid. Second on the grid he was last weekend in Mugello. Third over the line in the sprint. A disappointing fourth in the Grand Prix. Once again struggling for front-end feeling after the first 6 or 7 laps. An explosive first 6 or 7 laps it was in the Tuscany Mountains.
Bagnaia, after what we saw in Mugello, will surely look to adopt the same approach again. He will want to lead from the get-go. Quartararo will want to ensure that doesn't happen. As you say, he's chasing a first sprint win, but don't forget, his only ever sprint podium did come here.
So Marc Marquez, the World Championship leader, 40 points clear in the championship as we come to round 10 of 22. Fourth on the grid is the 93. Wasn't able to add his 101st pole position here this morning. Alex Marquez, 9 front row starts in 10 rounds so far for Alex. Pecco Bagnaia goes away from second. But for the 4th time in 6 races, it is Fabio Quartararo aiming for a first Yamaha sprint win from pole position.